Have you ever wondered why the Roman legion was considered the most perfect military machine in history for centuries? Many would say that it was due to discipline, training, and ingenious tactics. But this discipline would have been useless if it had not been backed up by an arsenal that represented the pinnacle of engineering of its time. These were weapons designed not only for combat, but also for suppression, control, and domination on the battlefield. Watch the video to the end to find out what little-known weapon the legionaries carried in bundles behind their shields, and why their enemies feared it no less than the famous pilum. What if I told you that one of the most effective weapons of the Roman legionary was designed not to inflict damage, but to protect? I am talking about a large full-length shield known as a scutum. This piece of equipment was not just passive defense, but an active offensive tool that largely determined Roman combat tactics. Its design was the result of a long evolution in engineering research. Initially, the Romans used round shields of the Greek type, but over time they switched to oval and then to the famous rectangular curved shape. This curvature was not accidental. It allowed the shield to fit snugly against the legionnaire's body, protecting his torso and legs, while effectively deflecting projectiles and blows that slid off its surface. The scutum was made of several layers of glued wood, which made it surprisingly durable, yet light enough to maneuver. On the outside, it was first covered with leather and later with thick canvas, which was painted in the colors of the legion. This surface also helped to absorb blows, preventing the wood from splitting on the first strong impact. The edges of the shield were reinforced with metal for additional strength. The central element of the scutum was a metal umbo, or boss. It not only protected the hand holding the shield from the inside, but also served as a full-fledged striking element. In close combat, a legionnaire could deliver a powerful blow with the umbo to knock an opponent off balance, knock him off his feet, or create distance to strike with a gladius. This was a standard technique that every soldier was taught, but the main strength of the scutum was its use in formation. Legionnaires closed their shields together to form a solid wall that was impenetrable to most attacks. This tactic, known as the wall of shields, was the basis of Roman infantry combat. It required incredible coordination and discipline, turning individual units into a single monolithic mechanism. The enemy faced not individual warriors, but an impenetrable barrier. The pinnacle of the tactical use of the scutum was the famous tortoise or testudo. In this formation, the legionaries in the front row held their shields in front of them, while their rear rows raised them above their heads, closing the edges. The side rows covered the flanks. This created a mobile armored box that could move under the heaviest fire, for example, when storming walls. The psychological effect of the sight of the approaching tortoise was enormous. The defenders of the fortresses saw an entire detachment approaching their walls invulnerably, and their projectiles bounced off the closed shields without causing any visible damage. This undermined their morale and made them doubt the effectiveness of their own defenses. They could not stop this slow but inevitable movement. The shield itself gave the legionnaire a huge advantage in combat. He could completely hide his body while watching the enemy through small gaps or over the edge. Then he could make a sudden lunge from behind this protection. The weight of the shield was also used to put pressure on the enemy, tiring him out and forcing him to retreat. Training in the use of the scutum was as important a part of a legionnaire's training as sword fighting. Soldiers learned to maintain balance at all times, to move in formation without breaking ranks, and to coordinate their actions with their comrades on the left and right. Your comrade's shield covered your right side, and your shield covered your neighbor's left side. Thus, the scutum ceased to be just a piece of wood for parrying blows. It became a multifunctional tool that defined the entire philosophy of Roman combat. It was a weapon of control, pressure, and collective force that turned the legion into an indestructible force. It can rightly be considered one of the cornerstones of Roman military success. Do you think that protective equipment that is actively used in attack can be considered a full-fledged weapon? Share your opinion in the comments. We are very interested to hear your point of view. Write about it in the comments and be sure to subscribe to our channel to continue our historical discussions. Can you guess why the legionnaire's main weapon, the famous gladius, was so short, while many of his opponents preferred long cutting swords? The answer lies in the very essence of Roman military tactics. The gladius was not a weapon for individual combat, but a tool for coordinated work in close formation, and its design was perfected for this very purpose. The gladius, or gladius, was a relatively short sword with a blade length of 50 to 60 centimeters. It had a double-edged blade and, most importantly, a long and very sharp point. It was the shape of the point that revealed its main purpose. It was a weapon designed primarily for delivering quick and accurate thrusting blows. The Romans did not invent this sword from scratch. It is believed that the prototype was a Spanish short sword known as the gladius hispaniensis, which they encountered during the Punic Wars. The Romans appreciated its effectiveness and quickly adapted it for the needs of their legions. Over time, the design of the sword changed, giving rise to several types, such as the mace or Pompey. The gladius was made of high-quality iron and later steel. Roman blacksmiths achieved a high level of skill in the production of this weapon. The sword had a comfortable handle with a guard and pommel, often made of wood or bone. The balance of the weapon was shifted towards the handle, which allowed it to be easily and quickly manipulated in confined spaces. The tactics for using it were simple and incredibly effective. The legionnaire stood in close formation, covered by his scutum. He did not make wide swings, which required space and exposed him to attack. Instead, he made quick stabbing thrusts from behind the edge of his shield, aiming at the enemy's vulnerable spots. This required minimal movement and preserved the integrity of the formation. Roman military theorists such as Vegetius explicitly pointed out that a thrusting strike was much more effective than a slashing one. It penetrated deeper and required less energy. While an enemy armed with a long sword swung for a single blow, a Roman legionnaire could deliver several precise thrusts. This was his tactical advantage. Carrying a gladius was also dictated by tactical necessity. Unlike most warriors, legionaries carried their swords on their right side rather than their left. This was done so that when drawing the sword from its sheath, it would not interfere with the left hand holding the scutum, nor would it hit a comrade standing to the left in close formation. This was another detail refined by centuries of practice. The gladius was not only the main weapon, but also a symbol of the legionnaire's status. It was his personal weapon, which he took great care of. Losing a gladius in battle was considered a great disgrace. Centurions and officers often had more richly decorated versions of the sword to emphasize their rank. In addition to its primary purpose in battle, the gladius was quite versatile. It could also be used for cutting, although this was a secondary function. In everyday life, in the camp, it also served as a universal tool. Its durability and convenient shape made it useful in a variety of situations. Over time, by the late Empire, military tactics had changed. Formations became less dense, and opponents, mainly Germans and Persians, preferred a different style of combat. The short gladius was replaced by the spatha, a longer slashing sword that was originally a cavalry weapon. But for hundreds of years, it was the gladius that was the blade that conquered the empire for Rome. What advantage do you think was decisive? The discipline of the legionnaire standing in formation, or the technical perfection of his gladius? In the next chapter, we will reveal the secret of a little-known weapon that won battles even before the legionnaires drew their swords, and which they carried in bundles directly behind their shields. I will reveal the most closely guarded secret of the legionaries of the late Empire, a weapon they carried concealed and which threw their enemies into confusion. It is not the pilum or the gladius. It is the plumbata, or martio barbulus, which can be translated as little spikes of Mars. This unique throwing weapon was so effective that a single legion armed with it could replace a squad of archers. The plumbum was a short throwing spear, rarely exceeding 60 centimeters in length. It consisted of a wooden shaft, a sharp metal tip, and most importantly, a lead weight attached closer to the middle or the tip. It was this lead weight, plumbum, that gave the weapon its name. The design was ingenious in its simplicity. The lead weight shifted the center of gravity forward, giving the javelin incredible penetrating power and stability in flight. The end of the shaft often had feathers like an arrow, which further improved its aerodynamic qualities. The result was a projectile that could be thrown a considerable distance with one hand. The main tactic for using the pluma was to fire a massive volley. Legionnaires of the late Empire carried bundles of these javelins, usually 5 or 6 at a time, in a special holder on the inside of their shields. This allowed them to have quick access to the projectiles right in the heat of battle. Before clashing with the enemy, when they entered range, the legionnaires' ranks rained down a veritable storm of these javelins on them. The flight range was impressive for such a simple weapon. An experienced legionnaire could throw a plumbaea 60 or even 80 meters, which was comparable to the range of a light bow. Unlike the heavy pilum, the plumba could be thrown quickly and with almost no swing, which was especially valuable in dense formations. The psychological effect of such a volley was enormous. Imagine a line of attacking barbarians suddenly being hit out of nowhere by hundreds of short but heavy javelins. They flew at high speed and could easily pierce light armor or shields. This caused confusion in the enemy's ranks even before the hand-to-hand combat began. The Roman military historian Vegetius, who lived in the 4th century AD, spoke enthusiastically about this weapon. He wrote that 2 legions in Illyria, armed with plumba, were so effective that they often won battles with virtually no support from other infantry or cavalry. He strongly recommended resuming widespread training of soldiers in the use of this weapon. This weapon was particularly effective against dense formations of enemy infantry or attacking cavalry. A massive volley could take out dozens of soldiers in a matter of seconds, disrupting their formation and creating gaps that were immediately exploited by the legionaries going on the attack. It was the perfect weapon for a first strike. The uniqueness of the plumbata lay in its niche. It was more powerful than a regular arrow, but lighter and longer ranging than a hand-thrown javelin. It filled the tactical gap between the heavy pilum and archery. A legionnaire armed with plumba became a versatile soldier, capable of fighting both at a distance and in close combat. Despite its effectiveness, the plumba never became as widespread a weapon as the gladius or pilum. It required special training, and its production, especially the lead weights, was more expensive. It remained a weapon mainly of the elite legions of the late Empire, who perfected its use. The decline of the Roman Empire also led to the decline of this unique weapon. It was too closely linked to the specific tactics and discipline of the legions. With the fall of this system, the little spikes of Mars were forgotten, remaining only a bright but little-known page in the history of Roman military affairs. This weapon proves that Roman military thinking did not stand still until the very end of the empire. If you like such little-known but fascinating facts of history, be sure to like this video. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on new research into the military affairs of ancient Rome. Are you ready to learn the truth about the most famous Roman spear, which was specially designed to break after the first throw? We are talking about the pilum, an ingenious invention that gave the legions a decisive tactical advantage. Its design was not a mistake, but a well-thought-out engineering solution aimed at neutralizing the enemy's main defense. The pilum consisted of 2 main parts: a long wooden shaft, about 1.5 meters long, and a thin metal rod of the same length. At the end of this rod was a small but very sharp pyramidal tip. The total weight of the weapon was between 2 and 5 kilograms, which made it a rather impressive projectile. There were 2 main types of pilum that legionaries carried into battle: heavy and light. They differed mainly in the way the metal rod was attached to the shaft. In the heavy pilum, the rod was securely attached, while in the light pilum, it could be attached with a wooden pin that broke on impact. But the main feature was the metal rod itself. It was made of relatively soft, unhardened iron. This was done intentionally. When a legionnaire threw a pilum and it hit an enemy shield, the following happened. The sharp tip pierced the wood, and the long, thin rod behind it bent under its own weight in the force of the impact. As a result, the enemy found himself in an extremely difficult position. A long, curved piece of metal with a 1.5 meter shaft at the end was stuck in his shield. It was almost impossible to pull it out quickly in the heat of battle. The shield became incredibly cumbersome, dragging along the ground, hindering movement and maintaining formation. The enemy warrior was faced with a difficult choice. He could either continue to fight, trying to hold on to the useless and heavy shield, or drop it and remain unprotected against the attacking legionaries. Both options were bad and led to a disruption of formation and a decline in morale. If the pilum did not hit the shield but simply fell to the ground, it would still bend. The soft metal rod could not withstand the impact with a hard surface. This made it impossible for the enemy to reuse it. The enemy could not pick up Roman spears and throw them back, which was a common practice in ancient battles. The tactics of using pila were practiced to perfection. At the command of the centurion, when the enemy formation approached a distance of 30 to 40 meters, the first ranks of legionaries fired a massive volley. Hundreds of heavy spears rained down on the enemy, depriving them of their shields a few seconds before hand-to-hand combat. The psychological effect of such a volley was no less important than the physical one. Enemy warriors who relied on their shields suddenly found themselves defenseless. Their formation fell apart and panic ensued. And it was at this moment of confusion that a wall of legionnaires' shields with drawn gladiuses descended upon them. This tactic, introduced, according to one version, during the reforms of Gaius Marius, became the hallmark of the Roman legion. It allowed them to win the battle even at the stage of closing in. The pilum was a weapon that perfectly complemented the scudum gladius combination, preparing the ground for their effective use. What do you think was more important in the design of the pilum? Its penetrating power or its ability to bend after impact? In the next chapter, we will talk about the legionnaire's personal weapon, his last chance in battle and faithful companion in camp life. Despite the presence of the formidable gladius and pilum, every Roman legionary's arsenal included another blade, the pugio. This broad dagger was not just a backup weapon, but also a multifunctional tool and an important element of a soldier's status. Its shape and purpose changed over the centuries, reflecting changes in Roman military affairs. The pugio usually had a wide, leaf-shaped blade ranging from 15 to 30 centimeters in length. This shape was well suited for delivering cutting and stabbing blows at very close range. The hilt often had a distinctive shape with a widening in the middle, which provided a very secure and comfortable grip. The main purpose of the pugio was not to fight in formation. The gladius was used for this. The dagger came into play in those rare cases when the formation was broken and the battle turned into a chaotic melee. If a legionnaire lost his sword or was captured, the pugio became his last chance weapon. Much more often than in battle, the pugio was used in everyday camp life. It was a versatile tool that was always at hand. It could be used to cut food, cut ropes, sharpen stakes for fortifications, or perform any other small task. Its durability and convenient shape made it indispensable in everyday life. Carrying the pugio was also regulated. It was usually worn on the belt on the left side, while the gladius, as we remember, hung on the right. This ensured quick access to either blade and avoided confusion. The scabbards for the pugio were often richly decorated, especially those of officers and praetorians. It was the decoration of the scabbard and hilt that often indicated the status of the owner. While ordinary legionaries had simple and functional daggers, centurions and legates could afford pugio decorated with silver, ivory, and enamel. This transformed the dagger from a simple tool into an object of pride. There were several types of pugio, which archaeologists distinguished by the shape of the blade and hilt. Early daggers were wider, while in the late Empire they became slightly narrower and longer. This reflected changes in fashion and possibly in the tactics of their use. Despite its auxiliary role, the pugio was a weapon in its own right. In confined spaces, such as when boarding a ship or in street fighting, where it was impossible to swing a sword, a short and powerful dagger could be even more effective than a gladius. Its piercing power was sufficient to cope with most types of light armor. Historically, the pugio is also known as a weapon of conspiracy. Its small size made it easy to hide under clothing. The most famous historical episode associated with this dagger is the conspiracy against Julius Caesar, many of whose participants were armed with pugio. This, however, does not diminish its role as a loyal companion to the legionnaire. With the decline of the classical legion and the transition to long spathis, the role of the pugio gradually faded away. In the late Empire, it was replaced by other types of knives and daggers, but throughout the hundreds of years of Rome's heyday, the pugio remained an integral part of a soldier's equipment, his faithful assistant both in battle and in peaceful camp life. What if I told you that before the legions switched to the famous pilum gladius combination, Roman soldiers fought like Greek hoplites? Their main weapon was a long spear, the gasta. Even after Marius's reforms, this ancient weapon remained in the legion as a symbol of honor and a last line of defense. entrusted to the most experienced veterans. The gastra was a long thrusting spear, usually 2 to 2.5 meters in length. Unlike the throwing pilum, the gastra had a sturdy thick shaft and a large leaf-shaped tip designed to deliver powerful thrusting blows. The opposite end often had a metal spike that allowed the spear to be stuck into the ground and served as a counterweight. In the early Republic, before the manipular reform, the Roman army was organized on the phalanx principle, very similar to the Greek one. The soldiers in the front ranks were armed with gastae and large round shields. Their task was to maintain formation and push through the enemy with a mass of closed spears. With the transition to a more flexible manipulative system, the role of the gastati changed. The legion was now divided into 3 lines: gastati, young soldiers; principes, soldiers in their prime; and triarii, veterans. The gastati and principes were already armed with swords and pilums, but the triarii, the third and last line of defense, retained the gastes as their weapon. This gave rise to the famous Roman saying, res ad triarios rediat, which means the matter has come to the triarii. This meant that the situation in battle had become critical. The first 2 lines had been crushed, and the last reserve was entering the battle. The triarii dropped to one knee, thrust their long spears forward, and met the enemy with a solid wall of steel. The triarii's task was not to attack, but to hold out. They were the legion's last hope. Their long spears were the ideal weapon for stopping the enemy's advance, especially cavalry or disorganized infantry that had broken through the first lines. Veterans, hardened in dozens of battles, had to use their resilience to give the rest of the legion time to regroup. After Gaius Marius' military reform at the end of the 2nd century BC, the legion became more unified. The division into hastati, principes, and triarii was abolished. All legionaries received standard weapons consisting of a pilum, gladius, and scutum. The hastatus, as the main weapon of the infantry, became a thing of the past. However, it did not disappear completely. The hastatus remained in service with the auxiliary troops, the auxiliaries, who were often recruited from peoples who had a tradition of using long spears. In addition, the hastatus was actively used in the Roman cavalry, where it was the main weapon for ramming attacks. The gasta also retained its symbolic significance. It was used by standard-bearers, aquilifers, and signiferous to carry the standards of the legion and maniples. The flagpole was, in essence, the same as the gasta. In addition, the spear remained a symbol of authority in civilian life, for example, during auctions. Although the era of the gastra's dominance in the Roman infantry was short-lived, its legacy is very important. It represents the bridge that connects the early Roman army of the Greek model with the classical legion that conquered the world. And its preservation by the triarii shows how much the Romans valued the experience and reliability of proven veterans. Which tactic do you think is more effective in the long run? A flexible formation armed with swords or a monolithic wall of spears? In the next chapter, we will look at weapons that did not inflict direct damage, but controlled entire battlefields, stopping even the most rapid attacks. The Roman war machine was famous not only for its offensive weapons, but also for its ingenious defensive devices. One of the simplest, cheapest, and at the same time incredibly effective devices was the tribulus, better known to us as a caltrops or garlic. It was an invisible weapon that controlled the territory and deprived the enemy of its main advantage, mobility. The tribulus was a small metal device welded or riveted together from 4 sharp spikes. It was designed so that no matter how it was thrown to the ground, one of the spikes always pointed straight up. The other 3 served as a reliable support. This made it ideal for quickly creating minefields. The main tactical use of tribulus was to combat enemy cavalry. The Romans did not always have a strong cavalry of their own, especially in the early period. To neutralize the threat of enemy horsemen, legionaries scattered these spikes in large numbers in areas of the field where a cavalry attack was expected. The consequences for the attacking horsemen were catastrophic. Horses galloping at full speed onto the sharp iron spikes suffered serious injuries. This immediately stopped the attack, threw the enemy ranks into chaos, and made the horsemen easy targets for Roman javelin throwers and archers. Tribuluses were also actively used in the defense of the camp. The Roman camp, or castrum, was already a veritable fortress with a moat, rampart, and palisade. In addition to this, legionaries scattered thousands of such spikes on the approaches to the gates and in the likely places of assault, creating an insurmountable obstacle course. This weapon was effective not only against horses, but also against infantry. Enemy soldiers, especially those wearing light shoes or sandals, could not move quickly across a field strewn with spikes. This slowed down their attack, disrupted their formation, and gave the Romans a tactical advantage in terms of time. The genius of the tribulus lay in its simplicity and mass production. Its manufacture did not require advanced technology. Any camp blacksmith could mass produce them from metal scraps. They could be transported in sacks and quickly deployed anywhere on the front line as needed. The psychological effect of using this weapon was also significant. Knowing that the field in front of the Roman positions could be littered with spikes, horsemen attacked with much less determination. They were forced to watch their step carefully, which slowed down the pace of the attack and made it ineffective. Historical sources, such as the Roman historian Curtius Rufus, describe the use of similar devices in armies other than the Roman, such as the Persians. However, it was the Romans who perfected their tactical use, making them a standard part of their defensive arsenal. They turned a simple device into a powerful tactical weapon. The tribulus is a striking example of how Roman military genius used not only force, but also cunning. They understood that victory was achieved not only in direct combat, but also through skillful management of the battlefield. By depriving the enemy of mobility, they gained a decisive advantage even before the main battle began. The Roman army would be incomplete without its artillery, and one of its most formidable examples was the Scorpion. It was a light torsion machine that could be called the ancient equivalent of a sniper rifle. It possessed incredible accuracy and power for its time, allowing legionnaires to neutralize key targets at long range. The Scorpion was a smaller version of a ballista mounted on a special stand. Its principle of operation was based on a torsion mechanism. Two vertical bundles of tightly twisted tendons, or horsehair, served as springs. Two wooden arms connected by a bowstring were inserted into them. When the bowstring was pulled, the bundles twisted even more tightly, accumulating enormous energy. The Scorpion was usually operated by a team of 2 or 3 people. One was responsible for aiming using special mechanisms, while the others helped pull the bowstring using a winch. It was a precise and complex machine that required trained personnel. It was not a weapon for mass fire, but a tool for precision shooting. The Scorpion used heavy bolt-like arrows as ammunition. These projectiles were much larger and heavier than ordinary bow arrows. Thanks to the enormous energy stored in torsion springs, the Scorpion launched them with tremendous force. The projectile could fly up to 400 meters. The main task of the Scorpion on the battlefield was to suppress key enemy points. Its crews targeted enemy commanders, standard bearers, or siege engine operators. One accurate shot could throw the enemy into confusion, depriving them of command. It was also a psychological weapon. No one on the enemy side could feel safe. Scorpions were especially effective in siege operations on both sides. When defending a fortress, they were installed on the walls to strike the attackers. During an assault, the Romans brought Scorpions to the walls to suppress the defenders who were interfering with the work of battering rams or the installation of assault ladders. Each legion had several dozen such machines at its disposal. Later, according to some sources, each cohort and even each centuria had its own Scorpion, which made the legion's firepower simply overwhelming. They provided fire cover for the infantry, preventing the enemy from maneuvering. The engineering perfection of the Scorpion was remarkable. All its parts were precisely calculated and standardized. The Romans improved on the Greek models, making the machine more reliable, powerful, and easy to maintain. It was the pinnacle of ancient mechanics and ballistics. The force of the shot was such that the Scorpion's projectile easily pierced most types of armor and wooden shields of the time. It was virtually impossible to defend against such a shot. This made the Scorpion one of the most formidable weapons on the battlefield. Although the Scorpion was complex to manufacture and maintain, its tactical value was undeniable. It gave Roman commanders a tool capable of influencing the course of battle from a distance. It was a highly accurate weapon that perfectly complemented the heavy infantry of the legions. If the Scorpion was the legion's sniper rifle, then the ballista was its heavy artillery. It was a huge torsion machine designed not for precision strikes against manpower, but for destroying fortifications and hurling heavy projectiles over long distances. The ballista was a symbol of Rome's siege power, an engineering marvel that was unmatched. Structurally, the ballista was similar to a scorpion, but it was gigantic in size. It also used two torsion beams made of tendons, but they were many times thicker and more powerful. Tensioning the bowstring of such a machine required the efforts of an entire team of legionnaires and powerful winch mechanisms. The entire structure was mounted on a massive wooden frame. Unlike the scorpion, which fired bolts, the ballista could use two types of ammunition. It could throw both huge, spear-like bolts and heavy stone balls. The weight of such balls could reach 20, 30, or even more kilograms. This made the ballista a versatile siege weapon. The main purpose of the ballista was to fire at enemy fortifications. Stone balls launched with tremendous force could pierce wooden walls, destroy battlements on stone towers, and disable enemy defensive machines. Prolonged and methodical firing from several ballistas could cause serious damage to any fortress. The firing range of ballistas was impressive. Large machines could hurl projectiles 500 meters and even further. This allowed the Romans to fire from outside the range of most of the fortress defenders' weapons. They could systematically destroy the defenses, preparing a springboard for the assault. Ballistas were complex and expensive machines. Their production required highly skilled engineers, ballistari, and scarce materials such as high-quality wood and thousands of kilograms of tendons. Therefore, they were not as widespread as scorpions and were part of the legion's artillery arsenal. To transport a ballista, it had to be dismantled and carried in a convoy on special carts. Assembling the machine in position before a siege was a complex engineering task that required time and precise calculations. But the result was worth all the effort. The Romans did not invent the ballista. They borrowed it from the Greeks, in particular from the engineers of the Hellenistic period. However, it was the Romans who perfected its design, standardized its calibers, and developed effective tactics for its use. No army in antiquity used artillery as extensively and effectively as the Roman army. The ballista was not just a weapon, it was an instrument for demonstrating Rome's power and technological superiority. The very fact that the legion had such machines often forced the enemy to surrender without a fight. The sight of these giant guns, capable of throwing stones hundreds of meters, exerted powerful psychological pressure. Many Roman sieges described by historians serve as examples of its effectiveness. For example, during the sieges of Jerusalem and Masada, Roman artillery played a key role in suppressing the resistance of the defenders and destroying their walls. The ballista was a veritable hammer that crushed the walls in the path of the Roman legions. The Roman siege arsenal included a weapon that could be called the last great machine of the ancient world, the onager. It appeared in the late Empire when engineering traditions were still strong, but resources and manpower were becoming increasingly limited. Against the backdrop of the loss of many technologies, the onager became a compromise, a simple, powerful, and reliable instrument of destruction. Its nickname, meaning wild donkey, was no accident. When fired, the machine really did lie down. Its entire frame shook from the recoil, as if a living creature were fighting off an invisible enemy. It was the successor to the ballista, but differed from it in principle. While the ballista used two torsion beams, bundles of twisted wires, bowstrings, or tendons, the onager had only one, but it was enormous. It was located horizontally inside a massive wooden frame. A throwing lever, fixed in the center, passed through this beam. A sling or a deep spoon for the projectile was attached to its upper end. The whole device looked like a combination of a huge bow and a giant catapult. Simple, but terrifyingly effective. Before firing, the lever was pulled back to a horizontal position using a powerful winch. The torsion cord was twisted to its limit, storing a tremendous amount of energy. A stone weighing between 20 and 80 kilograms, sometimes more, was placed in the sling. Then the mechanism was released. The lever flew up at a terrifying speed, hit a crossbar covered with leather or bundles of reeds, and the projectile flew out in a high arc. The air rang out, and seconds later, a rumble could be heard in the distance, the impact of dozens of kilograms of stone hitting stone walls. The main advantage of the onager was precisely this arcing trajectory. The ballista fired in a straight, flat line, ideal for breaching walls, but useless if the enemy was sheltered behind fortifications. The onager, on the other hand, threw projectiles over walls, making the enemy feel that there was no safe place. Its blows destroyed roofs, warehouses, barracks, and morale at the same time. A city subjected to such bombardment turned into a resonator. Each blow echoed in the hearts of the defenders. However, the Romans did not limit themselves to stones. Engineers and craftsmen of the late empire developed a whole range of ammunition. Clay pots filled with combustible mixtures of resin, oil, and sulfur exploded in flames upon impact. The earliest prototype of incendiary shells. Sometimes jugs filled with lime or fine sand were used to blind and disorganize the enemy. Descriptions by Ammianus Marcellinus indicate that during the sieges of the 4th century AD, such shots caused panic fires and chaos within cities. Despite its power, the onager's design remained relatively simple. It required fewer precision metal parts than a ballista and could be assembled from readily available materials directly at the siege site. The base was a sturdy frame made of oak or elm, reinforced with metal brackets. The torsion beam was made of ox tendons soaked in fat to maintain elasticity. Winches with worm gears were used for tensioning, and the lever was fixed with an iron pin and a locking cord. Working with the onager required experience and discipline. The team consisted of 6 to 10 people. One operated the winch, 2 loaded the sling, 1 monitored the angle of aim, and the senior member gave the command to fire. After firing, the machine often jumped in place, so earthen embankments or supports were erected around it to prevent it from destroying its own platform. Despite its external roughness, the onager was a precise instrument. An experienced calculation could send shells up to 300 meters away with a deviation of only a few steps. The strategic importance of the onager went far beyond engineering. It became a weapon of psychological pressure. The sound of its shot, the dull crack of twisted wires and the whistle of the lever, was recognizable and terrifying. Contemporaries wrote that at the first volley, the besieged felt the earth tremble beneath their feet. It was not the walls that collapsed first. It was the will to resist. But on the other hand, the onager became a symbol of the end. It exudes raw power and a lack of grace. If early Roman technology strove for perfection in proportions, the onager was a technology of survival. Simplicity replaced skill, and strength replaced precision. It was a machine of an era when resources were running out, but the mind still fought for greatness. Ammianus Marcellinus, an eyewitness to the late Roman wars, wrote about them with almost mystical fear. He called the onagers stone throwers that strike the heavens themselves. Indeed, they seemed to embody the wrath of the empire. Thunderous chariots without horses. One accurate shot could destroy an entire tower or pierce the roof of a temple. Wherever the onager appeared, walls trembled. However, this machine had a vulnerability: its immobility. The onager was assembled directly at the site of the siege, and after the battle it was often dismantled. It was almost impossible to move it across rough terrain. Therefore, during enemy sorties, the Romans provided the onagers with constant cover. Detachments of legionaries with shields and spears, ready to repel attacks by infantry or cavalry. The onager became the crown jewel of Roman siege engineering, the last great tool of an era when knowledge still prevailed over chaos. It embodied the transition from the world of Augustus's precise calculations to the world of brute force of the late empire. Even in their twilight years, the Romans knew how to turn limited resources into deadly efficiency. And when its lever flew up, throwing a stone into the sky, it was not just a shot. It was the voice of a dying civilization, the last blow to the walls of the world that once belonged to Rome. We have looked at 10 examples from the formidable arsenal of ancient Rome, from the multifunctional scutum shield and short gladius sword to high-tech siege engines such as the ballista and onager. This arsenal shows that Roman military power was based not only on iron discipline, but also on constant research, adaptation, and engineering improvements. What other topics from the military history of ancient Rome or other eras would you like to see on our channel? Perhaps you are interested in the logistics of the Roman army, the system of fortifications, or the tactics of naval warfare. Suggest topics for future videos in the comments, and of course, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our new research.